Hey, good afternoon. My name is Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios, and welcome to episode 31, I think, maybe 32, of my Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. Today is going to be a fun day. We're going to kind of redo some work that we've already done. So if you're just tuning in with us, we just got the Yamaha R6 tail lamp on there. Increasing the aesthetic value of the bike pretty immensely. I'm really happy with how that tail lamp turned out, and overall I'm really happy with how the bike is starting to look. I think it's starting to look great, but when I look at it, something about it bugs me. Something's off, and some of you guys in the channel have commented, and I've talked to you, a couple of you about it, and I think we all know what it is, and it's the gas tank, right? The gas tank looks kind of weird. It's it's just kind of small. So that's the original Virago gas tank, it's just a little small. It's a 3-gallon tank, I think. And when you're sitting on the bike, it doesn't really leave a lot to be desired. It's just small and dinky. There's nothing really wrong with it per se, but it looks a little weird. So I think it's just a little small for the bike. But the worst problem about it, the one thing I really don't like, if you go back to our tank videos, we modified, that, and we modified the, we cut these holes in there to make sure it fit flush. And that was all well and good, but we were never able to figure out anything for this gap. So there's this gap in the seat. And I think that's what makes the bike look weird. That gap is easily the worst offender for the aesthetics of the bike. I see a lot of people on the Virago forums talk about, using other gas tanks and everything like that. And all the guys that I see do it, they grab a tank from another bike and they modify their frame to mount the tank, which is something I didn't really want to do. I didn't want to have to modify the frame to replace the tank and get rid of this hump in the seat. So you've probably noticed already the tank that I've chosen, and this is from a 1981 Yamaha Virago XV920R. It's this very specific model. The 920R is a chain drive Virago, and what this is a 5-gallon tank as opposed to the 3-gallon tank that's currently on there, that came with the US model Virago. I want to say the 920R is a European model, so it may or may not have ever been released in the United States. It may have just been like Euro and Canada. But I'm not positive on that. Either way, these tanks are not cheap, and they're becoming increasingly rare. You can see the one that I've got is not in the best of shape. It's pretty beat up and looks pretty gross on the inside. But we have a little bit of experience restoring tanks, and you can go back to one of our previous videos to see how we restored this one. I'm a little disappointed we already did all the work of restoring that tank, and now we're not going to use it. But that's the name of the game sometimes. So the idea is to swap our OEM Virago tank with the tank from the 920R. Luckily, because it's the same generation Yamaha, this is a direct fit bolt-on. You don't have to make any changes whatsoever for this tank to mount up to the frame of the XV750. So it will work. You just plug and play. Even the gas cap is the same. So you just pull your cap off, install it here, mount the tank the same way you did with the other one, and bam, you've got 2 extra gallons of capacity and a much more aggressive line. So the bike is going to look a little cooler, it's going to be a little fatter, and we're going to get rid of that bulge around the seat. So let's go ahead and we'll mock this up real quick, and I'll show you what the bike is going to look like before we get started. Okay, and then there's what the 920R's tank looks like installed on the XV750. I think it looks great. It is much sexier. It's a lot fatter, you know, it gives the bike a much more like aggressive look. I really like the you know, the flare right there in the side. You know, I think it makes the bike look pretty badass. It'll look especially good once it's flat black, you know, to match the rest of the bike. Unfortunately, there are still a couple modifications that need to be made to make this tank work. Like I said, it is a direct bolt-on, and at least mounting it up like this works correctly without any modification to the 920R's tank. So, like with the 750's tank, how we had to cut out these notches right here to make it fit around our custom subframe, that is not necessary with the 920R's tank. It's mostly because of how it mounts. You know, so that's not necessary with the 920R's tank. We will still need the tab that we were going to use for you know, the throttle cable. We are still going to have to you know, basically come up with a way to mount this, and we'll weld a tab just like we did with the other one so that we can bolt this in here. You know, no big deal, but it is a concern. As you can see how it's kind of like pushing that throttle cable out. It's a tight fit already right there, and there's not a lot of space that we can use for it, but we need something something right there to hold it in place. So we'll have to weld another tab. But then the next part that kind of sucks is it looks like we're going to lose a little bit of turning radius. So you can see how it jams into the horn button right there, and then of course it pushes into the start switch on this side. We were already kind of running a little low on turning radius for this bike, so that's not great, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about this just yet, but I'll be sure to let you guys know what solution I come up with as soon as I have one. The last part is the seat. So, you know, the seat bolts in here. Unfortunately, it's a little too far back. We needed it here, and that's where the mount holes are. You know, so the mount holes are a little too far back. So we actually need to modify this seat a little bit, which means we're going to have to remove the staples near the front and modify the plastic, you know, this hard plastic bit, so that it conforms to our tank. And we'll have to chop up the foam a little bit too to get that to seat flush. Once it's there, we'll just fold it back over and staple the vinyl back down into the plastic. No problem. So we'll modify the seat a little bit to get it to fit. But once it fits, once it's fully fit, you know, that gap that we were concerned about, much less of an issue and more like a factory bike. You know, it's a total non-issue with this tank. So overall, I think I'm going to be really happy with it. I think it gives it more of like a big fat Street Fighter look, as opposed to that tiny little Virago tank that it had. Plus, like the extra 2 gallons. I mean, You know, I don't know what the gas mileage is on this thing, but I can't imagine it being very good. I think I read on the forum most people are getting like 150-ish miles to the tank, you know, with their OEM tank on 3 gallons. At a 5-gallon tank, you know, you're probably looking at 250 miles between fill-ups, which is more akin to like my CBR, you know, or my Buell. Which would be real nice to have that extra range. So yeah, okay, well, I think that's about all I really have to show you for the moment. We're going to restore that tank, the 920R's tank. We're going to restore it just like we did with the other one. So we'll coat the inside with the KBS coating. If you want to go back and watch the video that I made on that, you know, we'll seal it on the inside, make sure that it's clean and ready for fuel, and then we'll give it a good paint job just like we did with the other one, and we'll get about to modifying the seat, which I guess I'll maybe cut a little bit of video for that, and we'll go from there. So stay tuned. Alright, here's our tank sanded down and cleaned up, ready for restoration. It might be a little hard to see now that, you know, it's been sanded down, but obviously, you know, there were still a few blemishes. I got kind of lucky in some spots where it was just real thick paint and the blemishes were just paint deep, kind of. So now that I've stripped all the paint off, they're irrelevant. There are still a few, like this one here, where that's like an actual like dent or scrape that occurred to the tank. And anywhere that we have like that little pock mark or something like that, anywhere like that, we're going to fill in with Bondo, just like we did on the last restoration. And we'll sand it back down again before we paint it. So, starting to come along. This is just a basic tank restoration, kind of like we did in the previous tank restoration video. So, we're going to skip through all that stuff. And if you need to watch it, just go watch me do that one. So, we'll be back when we're ready to put it on. Okay, so we're in the middle of the restoration of the tank from the XV920R. As you can see, I've gone and stripped it down, you know, gotten rid of all of the paint, and started prepping it for, you know, a complete restoration. So I've gone and cleaned out the inside of the tank. It's pretty clean now. We're getting ready to do the acid etch and the polyurethane sealant, like we did in a previous episode, but again, we're going to skip over all that. But since we're getting ready to finalize this piece, you can see that I went ahead and got the tab welded in place to mount the throttle cable. But the next piece of the puzzle is getting the seat mounted. As we discussed earlier in the video, this seat is what we're going to end up using, I think, and with the new tank, it's just a little too long to mount where it needed to mount. So as you can see, like those bolt holes there, you know, don't really line up anymore. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to pull the staples out of the top of this and basically, you know, chop out a little bit of foam and plastic right here around the top so that it will now fit flush with our new tank. So that's the mod that's going to have to happen. Luckily, the seat wasn't very expensive. I think, like, if I went to, you know, all of my other bikes, I've bought Corbin seats for. I really like their quality. As you can see, Corbin. I really like them. I tried to contact them about getting a seat for this bike, but they never responded to my email. I assume because it's a custom bike, which means it's a custom fitted seat. And without the bike on premises, I can see how that would be kind of difficult to accomplish. Either way, if Corbin happens to watch this, I'm willing to send my custom cut up seat, the one that I modified to fit. I'm willing to send this to you so you can copy it and make me a Corbin seat. I'd love that. But otherwise, this is what we're going to do. We're going to chop that up and we're going to get it mounted. So here we go. Okay, so this is the underside of the seat. You can see I've already painted it and it's already started chipping. We might repaint this. while we're at it, just to be sure. But we're going to start by prying out these staples out of the vinyl here. And hopefully we don't tear the vinyl in the process. I'd like to try and keep as much of it intact as we can. So just pull the staples out using a pair of needle nose pliers. Okay, so I pulled out 5 staples, and obviously you can see where the vinyl has been sewed together here. And you see our seat foam and the plastic here that acts as its frame. I left these 2 staples here. We're going to try and keep those in if we can. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take a Dremel and we're going to carve out some of this plastic and foam and just get rid of it. And we'll try and leave the vinyl 100% intact. Okay, so let's get out the Dremel and the cutting wheel and go to town. So the reality what's going to happen is we're going to have to like eyeball cut this. You know, it's basically like, it's really difficult to measure exactly what I need. What we're going to end up doing is just by eyeballing it and looking at it like this, I kind of think everything that's not part of this circular piece here needs to go. So like we need to chop out all of this. But I could be wrong, and we may need a little bit of extra space, you know, to actually get this fitted properly. So I'm not really sure yet, but we're going to start by taking a little, and we'll go bit by bit until it fits. Just like that. Now we get the plastic bit out. Now we can chop off more foam as necessary. And so we'll still have a nice rigid frame around the tank, hopefully. Right? I mean, kind of hard to see exactly how that's going to fit, but I'm hoping that it'll just fit snugly right there when we take all this foam out. With a little bit of the foam ripped out, you can see we have this extra layer of padding there, which is fine. We should be able to roll it, like fold that in, and that should help create a nice thick pad between the seat and the tank, so that's cool. Hopefully it fits well. The problem though is really going to be these edges. So these plastic edges that come up, you know, they're just not going to fit with the shape of this tank. So we're going to end up having to chop some of these off. And I think the reality is we're going to have to cut at least a little bit into it. I'm not sure exactly how far yet. But we'll start chopping it up and find out. And then just chop out the corners there, kind of like that. So you can expose the foam, which we can then just tear out. We're obviously going to have to clean this up a little when we're getting ready to finish. Okay, so it turns out we need to take just a little bit more out of the corner here. But I think we're going to try and leave the foam there, just above it, because the foam does butt up against the tank real nicely. But yeah, we'll chop out just a little bit more right here in the edges, and then I think we'll be good. There we go. So now we're more or less perfect. I haven't fitted the screws in there, but they are mounted correctly. And it's pressed kind of tightly right now because of the flaps. I haven't stapled these down yet. You know, so we just pretty much just, you know, made this more or less level, straight-ish. Chopped out a fair bit of foam. I did leave maybe about, you know, as you can see, about an inch of extra foam there. You know, I don't think I think once it's pressed against the tank, you know, this foam kind of compresses, but it's also pretty well covered by this big fat padding here that we're going to leave in place. So what's going to happen is I'm going to basically staple this stuff back down, okay, real tight. I'm basically going to staple this back down real tight, and then we'll cut this vinyl here, you know, so that the staples are right in here through this big padding, and then we'll have that as our seat. I think that'll work out pretty well. So yeah, not a bad deal. Just had to make a little mod to that. I don't own a staple gun, so I think I'm gonna have to go out and buy one to actually finish this project, which is fine. You know, I'm not opposed to that. I'm totally okay with. So we'll go do that. I might have some self-tapping screws. I wonder if I could pull that bullshit off. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, so not bad. So in lieu of staples, here's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. We can fold back the vinyl so that it's kind of sort of tucked under the foam here. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically use some of this E6000. This is like some super crazy super glue kind of stuff, industrial strength super glue. And we're going to basically fill her up with this stuff all over, squeeze it down, like tuck it in like this and squeeze it down so that it folds like kind of like that. And then what I think we're going to try to do is once it's dried, I'm going to drill into it with these self-tapping screws, which will tap down into it and hold the vinyl in place. We'll see if that works, and if it does, I think we'll be in good shape, because that's really exactly what I need. And we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so here's kind of how this is going to work. We're basically going to take one of these screws here, like that, and it'll kind of self-tap itself into the plastic, hold that vinyl in place. We'll do the same thing over here. And there we go. Nice and cozy. I think that'll work out real well. And now when we go to put it on our bike, it'll fit a lot better. Right? So I think maybe we wound it a little too tight. We needed a little bit of that extra foam there to cover that base of the tank. That would have been nice. So yeah, maybe we cut it a little too tight. Back this out and see if we can save it to make sure that that's fitted as best as it can be. Something more like that. Yeah, something more like that, so it's a little looser up top, so it has more of like a little cave to host this thing. So now when we put this in place and bolt it down, you know, now we're going to be flush and perfect. So this is going to end up being pretty good, I think. And really that's what I wanted to fix by swapping out the tank. I wanted to fix that gap inside of the you know, inside the seat with the tank. And I think this could not have worked out better. You know, this looks like it came from the factory almost, you know. And altogether, you know, we still have some okay padding. I mean, the seat's not great, you know, it's not like one of my Corbins. But overall, pretty happy with that. So, not too shabby. So that's what you have to do to mod the seat to get that to fit on the new tank. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the tank restoration. It's probably going to take a week or so to actually do all that, just like I did in the last video, you know. But once I, you know, get it, do the acid etch and do the sealing on the inside, I'll paint it, and we'll be ready to put it back on the bike. Yeah, I'm super happy with how that turned out. But yeah, I'm going to go back and finish up the restoration, and we'll wrap up this video after that. And alright, so at the end of the day, that's what the tank's going to look like. I'm not quite done finishing up the exterior. We've gotten it sealed on the inside, but you know, I only did the first pass of Bondo and flat paint. That's really only like the first coat. So it still needs to be like wet sanded and, you know, polished up and everything like that, but this will get us moving and give you a good look at what it's going to look like fully installed. I'm really happy that, you know, it fixed that weird gap in between the seat and the tank. Now we're like perfect. That's like factory kind of, you know, quality, I think. How well that turned out. You know, it fits really well. It looks really good now. You know, I think it's a much more aggressive looking tank. You know, obviously the 2-gallon extra capacity is super nice. Yeah, I think the only negative with it is we lost a little turning radius, you know. So you can see where now I'm kind of contacting the horn button and turn signal switches. And then it's the same thing over here where I'm hitting that. So we're gonna have to come up with you know, some way to get around that. And it's probably gonna be like handlebar risers or something like that. But overall, I'm super happy with this mod. I think it makes the bike look really fucking cool. Way better than the other tank. And I'm really happy that, you know, it fits right up to the Virago XV920R frame with 0 modification, you know, and you can use the same petcocks and everything. It's the same design, it's just bigger and cooler looking than that one was. Yeah, pretty happy with how that turned out. Now that that's out of the way, I think we can get back to the wiring, you know, our regularly scheduled stuff. So, yeah, very cool, right? Thanks for watching.